Yeah. Yeah, we talked about
Closing or no? Oh, here it is.
Yeah, because we. A little bit back. It's probably fine. There.
Oh, that's up I'm talking. I'm not seeing
Thank you for joining us in today's breakout session. I think there is the right room of the three available to you. We will be doing a report out for what you're missing in parallel with what's happening with the others when we start to the plenary room afterwards. But yes, hello and welcome to our breakout session featuring an expert panel. And we will be featuring, or we will be exploring this question of, can market-based mechanisms accelerate decarbonization of our food system? I'm Benjamin Bartley. I'm with the business development team at SAMSER. We're the Secretariat of the Value Change Initiative, and we're a climate impact verifier specializing in digital verification, scope 3 interventions, and particularly interventions within the food and ag sector. So we do follow sector agnostic guidance in terms of our audit team. I'll be moderating today's panel. And really, this discussion is a great extension of our earlier programming in the sense that we'll be building off those discussions, from Kevin and from the plenary panel, where we're really at a juncture where implementation is important. I really like Kevin's description of, the nature and the earth seeing the maths less so than the standards. So implementation is definitely going to be a theme of today's standards or today's discussions, in the sense that we will be hearing from the learnings of implementing scope 3 interventions relative to science-based targets, flag commitments, but with this particular concept and theme also of how a market-based approach to greenhouse gas accounting can potentially help in the scaling and implementation. The Value Change Initiative has guidance that we have published on many topics, but earlier this year we came out with the Food and Ag Working Group 3 output, which defined market-based mechanisms as an approach that uses carbon pricing and market dynamics to provide incentives to accelerate decarbonization activities. In practice, this really just means enabling calculation of greenhouse gas emissions using certificates or transferable claims of greenhouse gas attributes that can be debundled from physical goods actually procured by a company. Future market-based mechanisms, are not new. They're actively used, and particularly in the voluntary market space. But really, the work of the Value Change Initiative and our members has been to develop the necessary safeguards and companion concepts like the supply shed to make this approach credible and applicable within a Scope 3 inventory reporting context. So with that, I will allow our panelists to introduce themselves, maybe starting from my left and moving downwards. But just include your organization, your role therein, your organization's climate ambitions for strategy or work in this space, and how you're looking to achieve that.
Hi, everyone. Great. Hi, everyone. Nura Singh. I'm with PepsiCo. I'm our Senior Director in the Climate Change Program, so I lead our Climate Change Program, which basically means setting our strategy at the global level and then working very closely with our business units as well as our functional teams in order to implement those activities and to drive forward towards our goals. What our goals are to achieve net zero emissions by 2040. And in the journey to that, we also have our interim goals by 2030 to reduce our value chain emissions by 40% against a 2015 baseline. We also have a Scope 1 and 2 goal of reducing emissions by 75% by 2030, also against a 2015 baseline. So there's a lot of focus on our interim goals for 2030 and how do we reach that. Definitely a lot of focus on that, but also towards this long-term target of achieving net zero. I think along with that, which I think a lot of times we fail to talk about, is also climate risk. So our strategy includes not just thinking about mitigation and reduction actions, but also thinking about climate risk to our business and how do we integrate that into our business processes.
They're muting it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Faith Berry, and I'm with General Mills. I sit within our climate team, which is part of kind of our overall global impact strategy. My specific role has kind of morphed over the years. I've been on the team for almost a decade, helping develop our first Scope 3 greenhouse gas footprint, and of course, setting our first science-based target back in 2015. Part of the process of renewing in 2020, which I'll get into in a moment. And then kind of continuing to build out our climate roadmap and working with the rest of our organization to allow them to help us meet that goal. Our goal is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 30% by 2030, and then to go even further to get to net zero by 2050. Similar to PepsiCo, we have a kind of Scope 1 and 2 goal embedded within our total, which is a 42% reduction by 2030. And all of those are versus our 2020.
Yep, thank you, Tom. Can you hear me? Good to be with you today. So I'm Pierre Buck. I'm Ben, sir. I think the title is Director of Climate Methodology. In a nutshell, it's for the GG County. In the economy, doing assistance through 50% of the time working with the PCI, experimenting with all these beautiful questions for you, all members of this panel. The rest of the time, I'll be working with our audit team. It's a big question for today, is like how do we establish credibility on this mitigation outcomes, and it's about establishing, about verifying. So I will be in the field with the audit team, making sure that all this story around mitigation is credible and as a point. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Teresa Ricardo, faithful lead of the SBTI. I sit on the technical team and I joined the initiative more than 2 years ago to help with the development of the tech guidance, personal and agricultural guidance. So with the tech guidance, we are filling a gap of almost 25, 25% of global emissions that were not covered before in target setting. So I think it's a huge contribution. And now I'm leading the implementation phase of flag in SBTI. So there are huge challenges, so I'm very happy to be here today to discuss. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julia Sokori, and I'm the head of carbon for Agora Carbon Alliance. Agora Carbon is a portfolio company of Yara International, and we help companies achieve their targets. We're a project developers, specifically in agriculture. And when we started about 3 years ago, our sole purpose was really to support farmers in the transition to renewable, to regenerate that. Really.
Great. And kind of harkening back to the plenary we just left, the title, "Can market-based mechanisms accelerate decarbonization?" was, welcoming to hear the entire panel, but even, Pankaj reiterating that, like, yes, there is a role for this, but, I think it definitely another theme said is like, if X, Y, and Z are true, and that we need to, protect against those who will try to game the system. And similarly, Mariam from SustainCert, describing how we need to, through the value change initiative, through our members, through those who are, working with us to submit interventions and pilot this guidance and really refine it, we are in real time helping to inform what are those safeguards and what could those X, Y, and Z be in order to bring credibility to this action. But it's not a foregone conclusion, can market-based mechanisms accelerate? The purpose of this panel is very much still to learn from, those first movers who are already applying, applying actions and interventions towards their commitments. What are they learning in the field and what challenges still exist for which value change initiative and this broader ecosystem still needs to solve for. So I want to hear from our panelists, and I think we'll begin first with Julia at Agora, who is a corporate advisory group member of the Value Change Initiative, brings a wealth of expertise from the voluntary markets, from this work that they're already doing, and is engaging with the Value Change Initiative to begin applying that experience within the realm of value chain decarbonization. So could you please begin by sharing some of the challenges that you are encountering in making that move to Scope 3?
Yeah. So we started making a move not too long ago, honestly. It was about 8 months ago. And for the last 3 years, we've been basically working in the voluntary carbon market and understanding what it really takes on the ground to be implementing these projects, understanding the nuts and bolts behind it, and really thinking of how then we could leverage that experience into Scope 3 for different companies. So for us, there is a number of challenges. Everybody talks about data challenges, about transparency, about actually the calculations and so on. And we've seen all of that, but I think as time goes by, it is becoming easier. Not to say that's easy, but it is slowly becoming easier. And there's a lot of different solutions that are coming out very, very fast on the market. To us, the biggest challenge is when we have these discussions with food companies or reporting companies, is really trying to match the level of ambition that they have with, wanting the best possible data, primary data, transparency, really understanding on the ground with the reality of how much it costs. And I think what we're trying to do at Agora is trying to kind of, on one hand, have discussions with companies and say, well, you can have a whole spectrum of things that you can do, but if you want the highest quality and the highest transparency, if this is the reality. And on the other hand, from our perspective, is how do we bring the cost down to really try to move into scalability? So trying to match those two and balance is really one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing lately.
Yeah. I mean, that resonates with me in a business development capacity in the sense that I'm working with a lot of reporting companies who are also looking to bring forward projects. And I don't know if if this mirrors your experience, but in mine, it's oftentimes like I have a pilot scale project. Yet I'm looking for that high rigor. I want, all of the things, but, what does that cost look like on a per ton metric or whatever the function is? But like, it doesn't pencil out when the, acres, the hectares and the resulting reductions or removals are typically what they are at that scale. So I'm just curious, is that mirroring your experience or like, yeah,
Yeah,
but- yeah.
so upon it, it, tells you a lot, it's really useful, you learn a lot. But you also need to understand that pilot does not mirror the economics of what scale really means. And I think in a world we've become really good at like being able what it takes and what it takes to deliver high quality, high rigor. And of course, we want to sustain that, but somehow we need to manage that with costs. And I think there's, it's not on only one side of the spectrum. I think, at some point those two will balance off, come to an understanding, and then that's when we will really see agricultural projects like at scale in place in different parts of the world.
Yeah. One more follow-up question too. Given that you have a longer track record in the voluntary market space, like what are the types of scales of projects, or is there a similar phase of small pilot to larger? And yeah, any experiences you can derive from that earlier work with how you're now talking with reporting companies wanting this into scope 3 space?
Yeah, I think we've learned the hard way that there, just because you tried a couple of pilots and you go in a new market or a new sector or a new approach like scope 3 doesn't mean that you can replicate what you did. So I think our approach has now been, we're going to try a few pilots, a few different approaches in different geographies, primarily where we have a footprint. Try to leverage what our core competencies are, but we also understand that there's going to be a lot of learnings, a lot of mistakes made along the way, but it's all in the process and it's a progression.
So I guess given some of the challenges you referenced, do you see a market-based approach to accounting to scope 3 helping to address that? Is it helpful, but not directly addressing the challenges that you're seeing today, or like, no, they are, trying?
Yeah, I think a market-based approach would be very helpful. Specifically on the transparency, and I think that is for both the reporting companies, but also for the farmers. Understanding what's on either side of what's on the other side of the table. And I think the market-based approach can bring that transparency if it's shaped in the right way. I think we also should try to learn from our previous market-based approaches that have been developed over the past 10 to 15 years. I do see space for it.
And I was lucky enough also, we had before this open event, the Value Change Initiatives lab related to claims. We also had an in-person session and Julia in my breakout session. So we were really like actually looking at a specific use case one of our members brought forward around like, how does allocation around a child product impacted by one of these interventions work, where like the supply chain concept absolutely necessary, although applied in a slightly different sense there, but is no less important when we're talking about a market-based approach as well. More akin to the theme of today's conversation. But thank you. And I'd like to turn now to Faith, General Mills, a longtime member of the Value Change Initiative, also a corporate advisory group member. And Faith, could you please just share more about General Mills's approach to scope 3 action and why you see market-based approaches being important to accelerate the progress?
Happy to. So first, providing a little bit of context around our, again, not surprising probably to anybody in this room, but 95% of our emissions do come from scope 3. Within that, nearly 40% coming from agriculture. So clearly, if we're going to meet our scope 3 goals, we need to work in agriculture, which we are. And within that, the ability to first identify what are those major hotspots, where should we speed and work, was kind of the work that we've been doing the past several years. And so we know that what's important to us, definitely row crops in North America, dairy, both in the US, but also in France, and then other things like, of course, plastic ingredients. So kind of once we've laid out, this is the place, the what, right? The what issue should be addressed, then we can get to the how. And, as a former colleague used to say, and at the risk of loving a sports analogy, we need base hits, not home runs, or even potentially grand slam, because there is no one big solution for this all. So we need to kind of look in all the places, in all the ways that we can try and address our scope 3. So we're doing that in multiple ways. And first, it's going to be your typical, we're working directly with our suppliers and in our supply chain to look for those places where we can have more of that direct traceability, right? So where we may not need things like the value chain initiative directly. And that really is to help signal, breaking it down very simply to supply and demand, right? How do we send that demand signal? But knowing that, that's not enough. We know that we couldn't just go out and use market-based mechanisms and purchase our way to meet our scope 3 target. So we really have to work on enabling that supply. And so we're doing that through, working in our supply sheds, where those ingredients are grown and where that matters to general principles. And so I've got amazing team members helping to do and implement that work, really understanding, what is it going to take? What does that farmer need? So really focusing on building that supply through coaching and technical assistance and providing those economic incentives to change. And so we're doing that, like I said, in some great places in the US around row crops. Think about the Southern Plain where we grow some. We're doing, partnering help with public entities to help bring more funding to those areas. Another great example is up in Quebec, where we source from dairy for our yogurt businesses, and where we really work with the farmers and some external partners to help identify, first of all, what is that farm's whole farm emissions, right? From the feed to the emissions to the manure, so they can get a sense of kind of where they're at, both for themselves, but then in comparison to their peers. And then we can work with, technical assistants and coaches to help them identify what are those options, like where could they start making changes to see reductions, and then leaving up to them to make those decisions, or what makes sense in their own context, in their own dairy operations. So we've got over 30 farms up in Quebec participating in this program, and we're getting really good feedback on kind of that approach. Again, very farmer centric, kind of looking at the entire system and trying to make that system change.
Well, you're mentioning the Quebec sort of, I think I was communicating with you and or C. Rosenzweig, also heavy hitter at General Mills and an active participant in lots of things ECI. But there's, this like question of, we want to holistically engage those, producers. And by the way, the producers, we might be sourcing, this type of milk from them, from a subset of them, but like, actually, we want to engage beyond just those that are, either directly traceable into our value chain or like are just producing maybe a certified organic, milk product. And in that way, the supply chain concept and application of accounting for it on a mass balance, would allow for you to engage a broader swath and not like really be limited in terms of the work that you're trying to do to incentivize the ground. I think I'm drawing a connection from one to one that's accurate, but yes, I mean, does that resonate with you? Is that a kind of accurate representation of one way in which the market-based mechanism is helping General Mills to achieve its not only commitments related to your science-based targets, but I think just wanting to impact producers that value chain in multiple ways?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we definitely we do always think about laddering up to that system's benefit, right? Whether generals can directly take the credit or not, are we doing the best that we can for the planet and for Mother Earth? And so if that means that enrolling farmers who are willing to make changes but don't necessarily fit the kind of supply that we have in that area, I think we're okay with that. And I think that is one of the benefits of a market-based mechanism where it's not completely separated from the material part, is not directly connected, but we do try to get that traceability as close as we can get it to the region, to the geography where we source.
Follow-up question. How are you planning to credibly track reductions in your GHG inventory and show progress towards your science-based targets?
The short answer is a lot of help from external parties. I could sit and do all the accounting and math on my own, get into the emission factors and start swapping out things. And we certainly have played around with that and took tests of that. But I think what we prefer is that a third party helps us review that math, if you will, to make sure that it is according to the most up-to-date guidance and to make sure that we're not making mistakes and to avoid that perception of greenwashing or taking the numbers to our benefit. So we prefer third party verification, which is why we already get our scope for emissions. Third party verified.
Great, thank you, Faith. Next, we'll hear from Nora of PepsiCo. And I mean, as we've noted earlier in the plenary, even in that word cloud, value chain complexities, particularly within a food and ag context, traceability, like those are some of the challenges that arose from that exercise. So given that, Nora, could you speak to how these specific challenges are playing out for PepsiCo? What is the biggest struggle you face that are related to complexity?
So similar to Jennifer Bills and they mentioned, for us, the biggest challenge that we're working through is our scope 3 emissions, which forms 93% of our emissions right now. And so solving those issues, and specifically we're focusing on our supply chains in agriculture, and packaging, in third-party transportation. Those are some of our major focus areas where we're trying to work through the supply chain complexities and working through how do we make action happen in those supply chains. So as an example, in agriculture, we have made a lot of progress around traceability, but there are certainly still challenges there, as there are in major commodity supply chains. We do have some direct sourcing in our agriculture where we do have a lot of traceability. But in other areas, there are definitely improvements and challenges that we're still working on. But despite that, we are making progress in terms of implementing activities and trying to spread regenerative agriculture practices within areas that we source from. And just because we don't have traceability all the way, maybe doesn't hinder us or stop us from doing actions today, because we do need to start acting on those areas today. One other example that I will give is around transportation, where we do contract out to third-party carriers. And again, similar to the agriculture side, tracing our exact load traveling truck on is pretty challenging. But in spite of those challenges, we are working to engage with our suppliers, our carriers, and figuring out those ways that we can decarbonize, whether through implementation of electric trucks or through the implementation of alternative fuels. We are trying to identify those opportunities and act on those opportunities today. So despite scope 3 being a pretty complex and challenging area, I think there are these sort of nuggets of progress that we have to look for and act upon today. The other challenges I feel like are sort of system-wide, and as a company, we alone cannot solve them. I think we need a lot of collaboration between public-private businesses, NGOs, and all other stakeholders in order to solve those challenges. They're systemic things like widespread infrastructure around electrification or access to renewable energy. Those are system-wide challenges that our suppliers face, and we cannot alone solve it for our entire supply chain. We need collaboration from every actor in this space in order to address those challenges.
Great. PepsiCo also joined the BCI as a global advisory group member to help and solve some of the challenges referenced at that implementation level. And one solution being discussed is market-based mechanism. Given the complexities you just highlighted with your value chain, are there instances where PepsiCo seeks to leverage market-based mechanisms?
Yeah, and definitely, I think market-based mechanisms that we heard from the plenary earlier has a space. And it definitely needs a space in corporate action and corporate accounting. I think today we do look at market-based mechanisms and try to leverage those where they make sense. I think we talked about renewable electricity space already, and the use of energy attribute certificates is one market-based mechanisms that a lot of companies are using today, and we do as well at PepsiCo. We leverage GACs through direct or virtual power purchase agreements or on-site implementation of renewable electricity as well. And I do think that that mechanism has definitely allowed progress in that space to happen. And so it's a good example. Of course, there are challenges that we still need to work through in that space as well, but it's a good example of how progress has been made in a particular space. But there are other areas that are more challenging, and that, similar to other companies, we're also looking at, like in operations or in transportation, fuels is another area that we're trying to solve for. And there is a space, I think, market-based mechanisms in that area as well, because most of those technologies are limited either because of availability of feedstocks, or that the technology is not mature enough, or cost, or there's some kind of challenge for those technologies. And market-based mechanisms be a way to spur more innovation and scale up those technologies in that space. So I feel like, market-based mechanisms are probably a tool in the toolbox. I think we need lots of tools, and so there's space for that.
Great, yes, thank you. Something you just said too, like Owen's whole dynamic of like the answer, what is the actual question now, came to mind for me, and it's like, well, I think you're posing a question here, and it is a tool that some folks, many of the clients I'm working with, see as pretty integral to them realizing their strategies. But again, like there is ongoing work necessary to ensure that its application truly is solving for a core question that we share, and that is structured appropriately in terms of like, yes, how does scope 3 GHG inventory accounting work in this context? So we'll now turn to Teresa, representing SBTI and that target setting perspective to the strategies and the implementation from several reporting companies that we just heard. And in particular, she's going to bring kind of the forestry, land, and agriculture flag perspective. So to that end, Teresa, can you talk about first the differences between beyond value chain mitigation and value chain abatement for the flag sector?
It's for discussion. So it's very important, I think, to understand the distinction between decarbonization under flag and actions to be undertaken under the VCM project. VCM stands for Beyond Value Chain Mitigation. So flag only covers actions within the value chain, and VCM companies to go beyond science-based targets. So in that sense, just be very clear, actions actions beyond the value chain will never be a substitute for decarbonization of the flag.
Then in following kind of this theme of implementation, can you share an example of SBTI's practical experience of flag guidance implementation?
Practical experience, like, I don't know, I think I would be more comfortable to say like things more general, because I sit in the technical team, so I cannot speak for the target validation team, for example. But let's say in general, just to contextualize, we are still in the early stage of the implementation phase of FLAG. So launched the guidance a year ago. And this year we were very much focused on building the capacity and building the ability internally to work with the FLAG guidance. So today we are proud to say, I'm proud to say that we have a team that is confident in validating FLAG targets. So we already have a number of companies that validated the targets. So instead of sharing one example about one company, I can say, for example, in terms of challenge that we, not surprisingly, we observe the most relevant challenges are, of course, in scope 3, especially for those companies that have very complex supply chains. And these challenges are very much about data quality and traceability, of course. This is what I can share. And maybe we talk about solutions, we don't have answers today, but of course, from our side, we have followed the conversations. Let's say we are very much implicated in the discussions with the change protocol team on the proposals that have been presented. So it seems that there will be very interesting, useful outcomes from these proposals. Maybe what I could say here is that my main point of attention is it's about the safeguards that will be, I think, need to be introduced, independent of the solution set. Because, for example, we also can observe that not all companies need alternatives for traceability. Some companies in the demand side, like many companies in the demand side, have good traceability already. So it's not about giving additional options that can maybe not send the good incentives for them, but really have the alternatives that are needed for companies that have no way today, with very complex supply chains. Just about not, I think the idea is not to have easy solutions, easy options, but what's the best feasible option today for those companies? And this doesn't mean that the best option, the best feasible option today will be the best option in 2 years. So we also need to make progress. So I think we need to be very careful about the incentives that we will be sending to the market.
You mentioned data and it's variable and from company to company, but if I'm a company preparing to set a FLAG target, what do I need in terms of data? What should I be thinking about?
Okay, so first, the change protocol guidance, land sector guidance is a standard to be used by companies. So we align with the change protocol guidance. Today we align with the draft guidance actually. So our requests in terms of data are the ones that are the change protocol guidance, which is about having data disaggregated, like removals data and emissions disaggregated and per commodity. But again, this is very challenging for some companies in scope 3, not only because of traceability, but also because data that we use today that are available in database and tools are not disaggregated. So it's very difficult sometimes. So we still need time for even the data developers to update the tools for a better disaggregation.
You've already referenced that SBTI is, aligned with GHGP or even the draft land sector removal guidance, as it exists today. So, and I mean, when I speak with clients, staying cert as an insurance provider, that's one of our North Stars. Like, we want to show that a project being set up, is done so with those criteria in mind. For us, the product requirement for our clients is like alignment with GHGP inventory reporting so that it shows progress towards science-based targets. So, I can say that with my client calls as much as I can, but it's always good when we can get, Pankaj, WRI, yourself, in these rooms, reiterating also, the alignment between your target setting frameworks and accounting frameworks. So that all being said, and given this alignment, there's much focus on how to enhance credibility, particularly related to removals. So do you have any examples of this from SBTI's perspective you care to share?
Okay. Thank you very much for this question also. So whatever will be the mechanisms to, let's say, to unlock the actions in scope 3, I think the reliability attribute of data is extremely important for the simple reason that targets must be credible. And credibility or reliability implies independent verification against standards, so in this case, change protocol sector guidance and flag guidance. So what I can say here is that unfortunately, this is not a reality today. I mean, we cannot, at least not yet, require from companies to have verification. Sometimes, some companies have the data verified, but it doesn't mean that it's really useful because it's not verified against our, the standards that need to be taken into account, or just because we have no idea about the, let's say, the eligibility of the suitor. So a question that I had that, I don't know if I have answers for that is about, okay, if you have a suitors in the landscape, how their suitors will, let's say, prove qualification to do the verification, actually. Should we think about accreditation, have this discussion in the panel session, just some minutes ago. So I think this is something that we still need clarity on that. Who will be doing this verification and what will be, let's say, how we will give the eligibility for these actors in the landscape.
We're a verifier, we're trying to do it, but we can't be the only ones either. And, where's the accreditation for scope 3? I mean, again, harkening back to like Mario's comment, a lot of ways, scope 3 as an ecosystem, landscape, whatever the term you want to use is, it's continuing to evolve. And, us as an insurance provider, we're drawing from, best practices, ISO 14064-2 for, project-based accounting, and we're necessarily moving forward too. So it's that balance of like, yes, our Northern Stars, as I just described, our role in this space, want to ensure credibility to all this, but making sure that we're doing so lockstep with SBTI, the accounting and target setting frameworks is definitely central to work as sustained cert and the which, I'm speaking about, but our last speaker also being at sustained cert, being Pierre, with the title that, you think is yours, and I haven't heard otherwise, so, but does qualify you, I think, to speak to some of these topics as well. But I referenced earlier kind of the BCI's food and ag output from our third working group released earlier this year, titled Achieving Net Zero Through Value Chain Mitigation Interventions. Pierre, that was a multi-stakeholder initiative. I mean, it was the output from our members and their conversations, and conversations with, others within membership, aforementioned target setting and accounting frameworks. But you were also actively involved in some of the authorship, the polishing, et cetera. So could you, drawing from that, speak to how that BCI output helps to define land-based emissions and removals, and how they can be accounted for in scope 3 categories?
I think I can, of course. So yes, indeed, as Director of Planning expert, I would like to emphasize one point. Benjamin is part of the business development team, is still capable of accurately recording the right ISO at the right moment. Yes, I can most certainly talk about PCI in ag working output, because like Benjamin just said, I was the time where I speak about this paper and why I think that everybody should read it. This output is just not another 50 pager, too technical and hard to read. It's something that you will learn about. Why is that so? Because it's the result of a process where a lot of like a comfort group or something like a support group, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, a lot of activists and NGOs coming together and saying, what we must do now is not clear. The bar, where is it set? How do I do action at the scale required now to unlock 1.5? So from the page 1 to page 50, you will find genuine and very honest answers that we found all together. Doesn't mean that BCI output will blend the GC protocol or ISO or any other standards. Yes, you can do that. It means that it's out there and it's really and honestly telling the story of what we understand and what we don't. It also is the birthplace for new concepts. Today we've been talking a lot about flagship, and that's a concept that was developed here. It is a concept that I've been looking for a very long time as a sustainability practitioner and as a climate activist. Is where we talk about how do we interface LC accounting, scope 3 accounting, and project accounting. Insurers, ECM, and PhDs that was better to figure out we talked about this before. I think, again, very honest attempt at saying in a document what we understand and what we don't. And you can clearly, by reading that document, see where the line is at. So when it comes to speaking about why you should be reading the guidance, etc., I think I spent a lot of time in this, and please catch up, and I can tell you a bit more about it. But maybe linking that back to the title of this conversation that we're having today, of course, ag, forestry, and market-based mechanism. For me, the question is like, can we do without? Can we do without? We need investment at scale, and we need outcomes at scale too. So the good players are clearly identified. They're winning the game. That's what I want as a climate activist. That's what I'm fighting for. When we apply the science of accounting, from LCA, from scope 3, etc., we understand that if you invest today, you're not going to be able to take home all you should be able to take home. And that's a problem that I have. So I am determined within the BCI, as far as systems, to be exploring actively how science can be safely done. I know it's rough language here, and I know that some of the counterparts that I work with, and I'm happy to interface with that ISO. By the way, I think about all these questions that were asked about ISO, and I think they are very excellent. All this conversation are about like, how do we use the science? How do we use what we enforce today? And we bend it just a little bit with the adequate safeguards to make sure that people can invest now. I don't feel like I'm in a position in which I have 5 years. Like sorry to say that, I cannot wait 5 years. I want leading companies that are in this room, and I truly believe in that. I want companies that are in this room to make the world a better place, and I buy that. I buy that story. And when I engage with other stakeholders, the person today thinking about Greenpeace, Mighty Earth, and all these other people that we all know about. And I try to tell them, read the guidance, read what we try to do. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm saying that we've got a spin, we've got a direction, we've got a momentum. So please join and tell us what's good and what's not good. I like very much what was said just before too. You know, trying something, see if it works, see what doesn't. And also for the SBT, like it's also in the same direction, there was a one version, there are going to be an updates and collectively reach a place where we can actually define what, you know, an organization that is doing the right thing and another organization that needs to get to that.
Sorry, I know I've had my chance to speak, but no, just a comment on the guidance. When I read it, so first of all, don't expect to read it once, 2 times, but you'll have to read it. That's just the way it is. Having said that, once I did read it a third time, I thought it was extremely creative in some of the thoughts that were, or solutions that were proposed. I thought that it was really creative, innovative, and perhaps not everything was clear. I didn't expect it. I think it's the first step to then understand what can, as you said, be slightly bent. And I thought it was really, like, for me, it was first time people are thinking outside the box, to really hard questions. So my compliments goes to you guys.
So
Thank you, but thank you. Yeah, the folks who really carry that water, but yes, so it'll be 150 pages after reading it. Here, you touched on it a little bit, but just want to make the tie-in back to, you know, this theme, you know, did it advance in any way also this conversation around market-based mechanisms? Does that reside in other guidance, or did we touch on it also?
So it's I am afraid it's a multi-layered question, and I will try to not go full geek on that because we only have a few minutes. But in a nutshell, the outcome of this paper will institute been able to open the gates to many very interesting conversations. First one, of course, include the GG protocol team, who has, I want to emphasize that open the door widely to this very like open doors to all these ideas and this thing. The other very interesting open door, and I'm referring to the upcoming work, which is protocol on market-based mechanism that was mentioned just before. Another very interesting door we opened is regarding the ISO roundtable on chain of custody system that is currently ongoing. It's led by the Netherlands Office for ISO, I think. And the paper was selected by these folks because it talks very well about the different kind of traceability of tracking system that can exist in value chain and the kind of claims that can be attached to those services. Why am I mentioning that is because to me, big company of concepts that live in the market-based mechanism or some concepts and these ideas, back to exactly what can be found in the guidance and relates to this mechanism. I really think that the core, and it's very confirmed by the most recent conversation I have with market definers and standards, the core question here is the supply chain, it's the sourcing region, how big can that be and how efficient it can be. I do not think that we're in a position in which we can afford to spend too much money here. I'm not saying that I don't want experts to have a job. I want experts to have a job tomorrow. But I'm thinking about how much complexity can it add on top of that. I recently discovered that there is somebody in the world is doing a PhD just to understand which standard is covered what. The realm of sustainability. It's a big fact. So just this doesn't sound reasonable to me. So if you want, sorry about this, but anyway, going back to the initial topic, I think you live in the supply chain, and now we put it in the finance and as market force. We go to standard makers and say, hey, this is what we believe is good enough. This is what we believe is good work. And for sustainability, ECI is what's sure. So of course, when we talk about market-based mechanism, most of them, or lots of them, would say there is at some point, now that we're reading all these documents, challenging a bit, of course, wanting to do the right thing and saying, this is good enough. And sometimes, no, it's not good enough. Because a yes, there's no value, you cannot say no. Again, you cannot stress that enough. And you will find that at the end of ISO 14065/3, I think. Anyway, in a nutshell, I think you get the feeling of where I'm going. I do not believe that we can unlock 1.5 without this kind of mechanism. And what was said just before in the room was very clear. I've seen a lot of market definers, activists, people passionate about sustainability, sending a pretty clear signal that it's going to be a thing. And I'm very much looking forward to be a part of it.
Great. And one final question, but I was gonna direct it to you, correct me if Faith, are you also involved with the draft land sector removal guidance? Working group, it's gonna be within that general bucket, so, I just know General Mills is present, but is it yourself or another representative?
Yeah, I will be participating. You mentioned Steve Rosenzweig.
Yeah.
He's our soil scientist, and he's very much involved in our overlap between regenerative agriculture and greenhouse gas. So he'll be involved as well.
Okay. Well, then, what I was gonna pose is that I know at least Pierre is involved with, on behalf of Sustain Certain PCI, in that drafting process, and just wanted to generally ask if you could share any learnings from the latest work happening within the GHGP, LSRG, in relation to what's been discussed in the plenary and or this topic in particular.
We got serious type of information, but I'm pretty sure this meeting digital was already made. We'll talk about that things. What I can say, and I think this is adequate, I guess would agree, is I've seen progress. That's what I've seen. And progress in one thing, in learning and in defining what we collectively understand and what we collectively don't. I've seen people asking what can be seen as dumb questions, which is a very good sign. People just like going out there saying, wait, using that term, you mean this, or you mean that. That's what I'm seeing. This is a very specific approach to the topic that I was introducing just before. How big can be a sourcing region? What is the land management unit? What is the forest management unit? It sounds very basic. It sounds like, wait, within this 4 years, we've been there like today. That being said, the output of this is a group of human beings, I think, coming to conclusions that I think the digital protocol can work upon to match its deadlines. That's what I believe.
Can you corroborate or neither confirm nor deny?
I tell you, no, I'm just kidding. So I wasn't at the meeting last week, that's true. I did recap again internally. I don't know how much I can share, but yeah, just similar, like, sounds like there was some good progress. There's still some things that are, to be determined. And then we're looking at the output of the meetings last week and figuring out how does that affect our approach we've had to market-based mechanisms, scope reactions, and things. For sure.
All right, I got the 5-minute warning at least 30 to 60 seconds ago, so I'm going to use a lightning round format, maybe to close this out. So if each speaker would like to highlight one key takeaway on this topic, or even if something resonated from one of the other panelists as it pertains to your lived experience, or however way you want to take it. But we'll begin maybe to my left again, Nora, if you'd like to kick it off.
Yeah, I think what resonated with me, which was I think said in the plenary as well, that it, the exact words right now, was to the effect of there's not one thing that we need to do. There's a lot of things, and internally at PepsiCo we call it there's not a silver bullet. There's option. Really resonated with me because that's how we look at it. It's vast and lots of things to do there, and lots of things to do now in order to achieve our goals. So we need all different kinds of mechanisms and solutions.
I'll give you 2 things. One thing that I've learned throughout my time at Climate Week is that most of us are facing very similar challenges. So how do we get better? Again, the risk using the C word that comes with a lot of collaboration to really get over these hurdles that we're all facing and kind of come together to get more progress faster. And again, we have another acronym we use at General called CHIMO, which stands for good enough, move on. Like, how do we know that we're like good enough? Right? Like we know the science is good enough. So that we can start making progress faster. As Peter mentioned, it doesn't feel like we have years and years to figure out definitions and rules and regulations. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I'll point to the points that were made just before. I think Jenny wrote that it's not silver bullets, it's not just one tool of the box of things that we need to try and test. The other thing that I like very much discussing about the ideas here is the need for validation and verification for short term. I'm a big believer in this. I'm not saying that everything is verified to. So that most of the things of massive granularity of everything, but just saying that I think over the short term, while we are learning, making mistakes, I think having to verify everybody that everybody else going to have that extreme.
Yeah, so the first one for me is that one about assurance and verification. I'm very glad to see how this has been discussed, not only like today here in this discussion, but I have seen how much people are concerned by that in the greenhouse gas protocol discussions as well. So I think this is going to be a reality, and I don't know when exactly, hopefully soon, but this will also send a real sign to investors. I think it's really on board. Not only from the SBTI perspective, but for the companies themselves. And another thing is that something that we discussed early before this breakout session today is about how let's say how interesting and complex have been the questions that people receive. So this is a very, very good sign, I think. So people know very well what they are talking about. So this is something that really called my attention today.
Actually, I was gonna end with that as a positive note. One of the things that really struck in me is the questions, the comments, the level of conversation, and the hard questions that people are asking are all the right questions. It's all the right conversations that we need to have. And people, in general, the level of knowledge that is in the crowd, it's quite amazing. So that almost brings hope that yes, there's a lot to do and we need to do it really fast, but with such a big crowd all constantly thinking about this night and day, I'm pretty sure that we're gonna come up with very creative solutions.
I share your optimism, agree, and with no more time left, would ask that we thank our expert panel for their work. We'll be returning to plenary for brief report out and programming. But please use this as an opportunity to network with any and all that are. Thank you again for your time.
Yeah.